Society operates on a lie, a beautifully crafted, commercially profitable lie that has infected the psyche of modern man. From the moment he can reason, he is told, directly and indirectly, that his value to women lies in his ability to provide, to achieve, to rise. The more money he earns, the more desirable he becomes. It's a narrative sold in advertising, movies, and even dating advice. Men believe if they build the perfect life, financially secure, socially dominant, physically impressive, women will come, stay, and worship. But this belief is not only flawed, it is deeply disconnected from the psychology of real desire. Carl Jung did not speak of women in superficial terms. He understood the layers of the human soul and the powerful, often unconscious forces that pull people into connection or drive them apart. According to Jung, what moves us is not always visible. In fact, the most powerful attractions occur beneath awareness in the dark, mythic places of the psyche. The anima and animus, the feminine and masculine energies within all of us, are not drawn to each other through logic or through wealth. They are drawn through resonance. So what is it that women actually want? Let's be clear, women do not crave money. They crave what money represents, but even that has limits. At a certain point, no amount of financial security can satisfy the deeper, more ancient hunger inside her. That hunger is not for material things, but for psychological presence. And this is where most men are failing, not because they lack resources, but because they lack depth. A woman's soul does not respond to your resume. It responds to your resonance, to the weight of your being, the groundedness of your inner world, the invisible authority that comes from facing your own demons and learning to hold them without shame. Jung called this integration. It is the process of confronting the shadow, the repressed, disowned aspects of the self, and merging them into consciousness. This is not a weekend self-help project. This is a psychological death and rebirth. It is painful, it is slow, and it is absolutely necessary if you want to offer a woman something more valuable than money, truth. You see, the masculine ideal that society offers is shallow. It tells you to be strong, but never shows you how to carry your own emotional weight. It teaches you to be successful, but not to be real. It rewards you for being polished, not for being whole. And while that may win admiration, it will never win the kind of raw, unfiltered, feminine devotion you secretly want, because no woman with real depth will offer her soul to a man who cannot hold his own. Attraction is not about aesthetics. It's about archetypes. The woman you desire may not even know how to articulate this need, but she feels it deeply. She is not looking for perfection. She is not looking for a man who has it all figured out. She is looking for a man who has been to the underworld and returned. A man who has fallen into addiction, into despair, into confusion, into failure, and used that descent as a portal to awakening. She wants to feel that you know pain, that you know loss, that you are no longer performing. This is not about being nice, it is about being authentic. And it is terrifying for most men, because to be authentic means dropping the mask. It means allowing her to see your wounds, your uncertainties, your fears, without collapsing into them or running from them. The masculine that draws her in is not invulnerable, it is self-possessed. It is the energy of a man who holds his darkness like a sword at his side. Not flaunting it, not hiding it, but owning it. And that ownership, that is what she wants more than money. It is something ancient in her biology, something sacred in her soul. When she senses that you are internally coherent, that your words align with your actions, that your emotions do not rule you but are not hidden either, she feels safe. Not in the way of locks and bank accounts, but in the way that allows her to soften. Her feminine nature can only unfold when the masculine energy before her is steady, not reactive, not performative, just there, present, awake. In the modern world, presence is rare. Most men are mentally elsewhere, thinking about work, about porn, about the past or the future, but presence is a magnet. It is the force that signals, I am here. I have faced myself. I will not flinch when you show me your truth. And this, more than wealth, more than ambition, more than beauty, is what causes a woman to open. Not physically, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. Jung believed that the human journey is not about becoming good in the conventional sense. It is about becoming whole. That means integrating all the parts you've denied. Your rage, your lust, your shame, your fear, and learning to hold them with awareness. When a man does this inner work, his very energy changes. He no longer needs to prove anything. He no longer competes. He no longer postures. He simply is. And that beingness is magnetic to a woman who is tired of boys playing men. She wants to feel your depth because it allows her to trust her own. When you haven't done your inner work, her emotional expression feels chaotic to you. You label her as too much, dramatic, unstable. But when you have faced your own darkness, you recognize hers as sacred. You don't need to fix her. You hold space. You witness. You remain grounded while she storms. And in that space, she finds something she can't get from comfort, money, or luxury, a mirror of her own power. This is not about dominance. It's not about alpha status. That's juvenile masculinity. This is about a deeper, quieter kind of authority, the kind that doesn't shout but radiates, the kind of man who can lead not because he commands others, but because he commands himself. That is the man she wants to follow, to trust, to merge with. And yet this level of presence and integration comes at a cost. It requires you to stop blaming the world for your loneliness. It requires you to stop chasing validation through performance. It demands that you sit in silence, look within, and ask, what am I afraid to see in myself? And then to confront that very thing, not once but over and over, until it no longer has power over you. Because only when you've sat with your own pain without trying to escape it can you sit with hers. And this, psychologically, is what intimacy truly is, the capacity to meet another person's chaos with compassion, not control. The masculine energy she yearns for is not the one that builds walls, but the one that holds space. The man who knows himself is the man who can see her. And when a woman feels seen, not as an object, not as a conquest, but as a soul, she responds in ways no amount of wealth could ever buy. There's a reason women fall for poets, artists, and spiritual men. Men who may not be rich, but who have range, emotional range, psychological range, depth. Men who can express grief and joy, who can hold silence without fear, who can witness beauty without needing to possess it. These men may be less secure on paper, but they possess a different kind of security, the kind that doesn't waver when life falls apart, because life will fall apart. The question is not whether you can build a kingdom. The question is whether you can remain whole when the kingdom burns. You walk into the room confident. Your suit is sharp. Your watch glints. You talk about your business, your goals, your grind. You've built something. You've proven yourself in the eyes of the world. And yet, when you look into her eyes, you sense it. Something's missing. She's listening but not leaning in. She's nodding but not opening. Because somewhere deep within her, something is still waiting. It's not your status she's watching. It's your soul. And most men don't even realize they've hidden it away. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And nowhere is that more evident than in how men attempt to win women. They show their bank accounts, their achievements, their curated lives, assuming that what they do will earn her love. But a woman is not moved by what you have. She is moved by who you are underneath it all. This is not romantic fluff. This is deep psychological reality. Jungian psychology teaches us that the feminine psyche does not respond to the ego's performance. It responds to authentic being. The ego, your identity, your pride, your need to be seen as successful, is not what connects you to her. It is what blocks the connection. What she craves isn't on your LinkedIn profile. She doesn't care how many clients you closed last quarter. What she wants is to feel your essence, raw, unfiltered, unguarded. And the tragedy is, most men have no idea what that even means. They have been taught to fear their inner world. Emotions, suppress them. Vulnerability, avoid it. Introspection, waste of time. So instead of cultivating a deep and embodied presence, they build a facade. They confuse external power for internal mastery. But no matter how polished the outside becomes, a woman can feel the hollowness behind it. She may not say it. She may not even understand it consciously. But she feels it in her body. It shows up in how she holds back, how she questions your sincerity, how she stays guarded even as you shower her with gifts or attention. It's not because you haven't done enough. It's because you haven't shown her what she's actually waiting for, the part of you that doesn't need to impress her. The masculine that touches the feminine is not performative. It is present. It is not dominant. It is deep. And depth doesn't come from achievement. It comes from inner confrontation. To offer a woman your soul, you must first know it. And to know it, you must descend. This is the core of Jung's work, the idea that every man must make a descent into the unconscious, to face the parts of himself he's disowned, denied, or buried. The shame, the fear, the desire, the chaos, the boyhood wounds that were never healed. These are the pieces of your soul that remain trapped in the dark, waiting for your attention. And until you retrieve them, you remain fragmented, half alive, outwardly successful, inwardly disconnected. And that disconnection transmits. No matter how confident you act, a woman can sense when a man is not rooted in himself. She can sense when he's performing success instead of embodying presence. She can tell when you're hiding behind your achievements because you're terrified of being seen without them. She can feel when your masculinity is brittle, externally solid but internally fragile. She wants your soul because she wants contact, not with the persona, but with the person. The real you, the one that breathes beneath the armor, the one that trembles beneath the pride, the one that's still learning, still feeling, still human. That man, the flawed, in-process awake man, is who she's searching for. And yet very few men are willing to show up like that, because it means putting down the weapons. It means removing the mask. It means letting go of the identity you've worked so hard to build, just long enough for her to see what exists behind it. Not your success story, but your soul story. She doesn't want a highlight reel. She wants the raw footage. She wants to know what broke you, what changed you, what made you question everything, what keeps you up at night that you don't tell anyone about. Where do you feel inadequate? Where have you failed? Not so she can judge you, but so she can feel you. Because when you share from that place, she's not just hearing words, she's receiving truth. And truth is the currency of the soul. Carl Jung taught that the path to wholeness is not about becoming better, it's about becoming real. That's what individuation is. The process of becoming who you truly are, not who the world told you to be. And in the presence of a man who is individuated, a woman feels a kind of safety that has nothing to do with income and everything to do with integrity. Integrity is not morality. It's not about being good, it's about being aligned. When your inner world matches your outer expression, when you're not hiding from yourself, you radiate a kind of certainty that no amount of bravado can fake. And that certainty, the grounded energy of a man who has met himself, is intoxicating to a woman who is tired of illusions. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you to be true, but truth requires risk. And this is where most men stop. They fear they'll lose her if they show her their darkness. They fear she'll see their insecurities and walk away. They fear that the image of strength they've built will crumble if she knows the full story. But what they don't realize is that the image is the very thing preventing the intimacy they long for. You cannot experience deep connection while hiding behind an identity you cannot merge. Souls, when you're guarding your own women, don't fall in love with facades. They fall in love with energy. And energy doesn't lie. You can say all the right things. You can check all the boxes. You can be everything she thought she wanted on paper. But if your soul isn't in the room, she'll feel it. She may not even understand why she pulls away. She might tell herself you're great, respectful, successful. But something just isn't there. What isn't there is you, the real you, the one that exists when no one is watching. The one that bleeds, that wonders, that longs. The one you buried beneath 1,000 expectations. That's the one she's calling out to. Not your polished persona, but your primal essence. Not your reputation, but your reality. And here's what's even more confronting. If you refuse to show her your soul, she will show you hers and watch you crumble. Because the feminine, when it trusts you, will reveal its wild, chaotic, vulnerable, vast self. And if you are not anchored in your own soul, if you are still clinging to image and control, you will not be able to hold her. You'll retreat. You'll shame her. You'll resent her depth because you haven't met your own. Your ability to witness her soul depends entirely on how well you've embraced yours. You can only go as deep with her as you've gone within yourself. That's not poetic. That's psychological law. She cannot dive into your emotional ocean if it's only a puddle of unprocessed wounds and rehearsed masculinity. She needs a man who has range, and emotional range is forged in the fire of inner work. In therapy, in silence, in reflection, in failure, in heartbreak, in the moments you wanted to escape yourself, but chose instead to stay. That's where the soul emerges, not in achievement, but in endurance, in the courage to sit in your own discomfort without numbing or fleeing, in the willingness to say, "This is me. Not the version I want to be, not the version you expect, but the truth of where I am now." A man walks into a room with money in his pocket, a career at his back and control written all over his face. He believes he's what she wants, stable, successful, respected. He believes depth is optional, vulnerability is weakness, and that a strong jawline paired with a stronger bank account is enough to hold her interest. But she watches him, and though she may smile, laugh at his jokes, accept his invitation to dinner, she doesn't open. Something within her remains untouched, unmoved. He feels this, though he may not understand it. He chalks it up to timing, to her emotional complexity, or worse, assumes she's not ready for someone serious. But it's not seriousness she's lacking. It's substance in him, because the feminine psyche is not seduced by surfaces. It is not drawn to mere appearances, no matter how shiny. A woman may be impressed by money, by power, by dominance, but she is not moved by it, not in the way that makes her soul unfurl. Carl Jung knew this truth intimately. He understood that attraction is not about what is seen, but what is sensed. Not the outer mask, but the inner weight, the shadow, the undercurrent, the unseen gravity that pulls two beings together in ways that cannot be explained through logic or social expectation. And the deeper truth is this: she does not want your shine, she wants your shadow. Not the fake darkness you parade to seem dangerous or alpha, but the real darkness you hide even from yourself. The unhealed boy, the rejected father, the rage you swallow, the grief you've never spoken aloud, the chaos you've tried to outrun by becoming successful. That's what she's waiting to feel, not because she wants to save you, but because your shadow is the doorway to your depth. You see, modern men have been taught to suppress their inner world in favor of performance. They are taught to control, to compete, to appear unshaken. Vulnerability is seen as weakness, emotional honesty as risk. So they build lives that are impressive but not intimate. They become masters of the external, but exiles to their internal landscape. And while this may work in the boardroom, it leaves them invisible to the deeper instincts of the feminine. She doesn't want the man who appears powerful. She wants the man who has befriended his inner darkness, and therefore no longer fears hers, because the feminine in her is chaos, emotion, wildness, the unknown. She is life and death, beauty and fury all at once. She does not apologize for it, she is it. And only a man who has made peace with his own shadow can withstand the intensity of hers. Not control it, not fix it. Witness it, hold it, meet it without flinching. This is where the sacred polarity between masculine and feminine energy comes alive, not in performance, but in presence. And presence cannot be faked. Presence is the result of inner work. It is born when a man stops trying to conquer the world and begins the much harder task of conquering himself. Jung taught that wholeness requires us to integrate what we've rejected, to bring light to the shadow. And the man who does this doesn't become softer or weaker, he becomes solid. Because he no longer runs from his pain, his guilt, his shame. He holds them, learns from them, and in doing so becomes a container vast enough to hold another's truth as well. This is what she is drawn to. She doesn't want a man who wins. She wants a man who knows, who has lost, who has suffered, who has broken and rebuilt without bitterness. A man who no longer seeks validation because he has already seen himself in his darkest form and decided to keep walking. That man cannot be shaken, not because he is untouchable, but because he has touched everything within himself that used to scare him. And this steadiness, this psychological gravity, is far more attractive than money. A woman may be physically drawn to beauty. She may be socially drawn to success, but she is spiritually drawn to depth, and depth only comes when a man has made contact with his own underworld. That is where his real power lies, not in his ability to dominate the external, but in his willingness to explore the internal, to feel fully, to face shame, to wrestle with meaning, to step out of the protective shell of performance and speak from the raw truth of his being. When a man speaks from this place, his words don't impress. They resonate. She feels them in her body. They don't try to manipulate her emotions. They mirror her soul because her soul is not shallow. It is not content with surface-level comfort or small talk about ambitions and metrics. Her soul wants to merge, not with the man you pretend to be, but with the truth of what you are when no one is watching. She's not afraid of your shadow. She is afraid of your absence. The man who hides behind control, who fears silence, who cannot sit with himself, is absent even when he's in the room. And she feels this absence as betrayal, not because he's doing anything wrong, but because he is withholding the one thing that could actually move her, his presence in truth. Women are often labeled as mysterious, irrational, hard to understand. But what is truly mysterious is that most men never ask why a woman turns cold in the presence of everything he thought she wanted. He gave her comfort, stability, luxury, so why did she drift? Why did she say she didn't feel connected? Why did she say she couldn't feel him? Because he never showed her his soul. He only showed her his armor. He was afraid that his wounds would repel her, not realizing that his wounds, owned and integrated, are what would have pulled her closer than anything else. This is not about trauma dumping. It's not about collapsing into emotional chaos. It's about standing in your full truth. Strong not because you've avoided suffering, but because you've survived it, because you've mined your shadow for gold. Because you are no longer divided within yourself, and that integration, that wholeness, creates a resonance the feminine cannot resist, because it tells her, you can bring all of yourself here. I won't flinch. I won't fix. I won't flee. And when she feels that, she softens, not because you made her feel safe through promises, but because you made her feel seen through presence. And presence is only possible when your energy is not consumed by hiding, proving, or posturing. Your shadow is not a liability. It is your greatest untapped source of connection, not just to her, but to life itself. It is through the shadow that your real voice emerges. Your real instincts, your real values. When you reclaim the parts of yourself that have been banished, your anger, your longing, your pain, you become human again. And it is your humanity, not your superiority, that allows a woman to trust you. You do not need to be perfect. You do not need to be healed. You need to be real. And realness comes from radical honesty with yourself first. Who are you when the masks fall away? Who are you when your success no longer protects you? Who are you when your charm no longer works? That man, the one left standing after the performance ends, is the man she can meet with her whole being. That is the man she'll open to. That is the man she'll follow. That is the man who doesn't just seduce her mind or body, but awakens her soul. She doesn't want the man who's always been in control. She wants the man who's known chaos and didn't run from it. She wants the man who has been brought to his knees by life, by truth, by heartbreak or shame or deep internal reckoning, and still stood back up without pretending it never happened, because only that man can hold the fire she carries. The illusion of strength in the modern man is built on avoidance. He avoids pain by intellectualizing it. He avoids emotional depth by distracting himself with ambition. He avoids vulnerability by constructing a persona, strong, composed, detached. But the persona is not the man. It is a survival structure, a well-worn mask, a defense mechanism. And every woman with real emotional depth, even if she can't articulate it in psychological terms, feels when a man is more performance than presence. She's not looking for the man who escaped his darkness. She's looking for the man who has faced it, the one who went down into the parts of himself he was taught to fear, and returned not sanitized, not perfect, but aware. Carl Jung's concept of the shadow is not a metaphor. It's the very structure of the unconscious. It's everything you suppress. Your jealousy, your rage, your lust, your grief, your inadequacy does not disappear. It sinks, and it rules you from below. The man who hasn't faced his demons is the man most controlled by them. He overreacts. He projects, he blames, he fears intimacy. He dominates or submits but never truly relates. He believes he's in control, but he's just not in contact, not with himself, and certainly not with her. She wants the man who's looked in the mirror and seen what's ugly and not flinched, not turned away, not tried to mask it with shallow affirmations or external validation. The man who has sat with the parts of himself he would never show the world and listened, because that man has earned his authority. Not the kind of authority that barks orders or seeks submission, but the kind of authority that makes her body relax in his presence, because she knows, on a deep cellular level, that he won't collapse when she shows her truth. He won't run when she cries, rage when she's wild, shrink when she's fully expressed. The man who hasn't faced his demons expects her to be small, predictable, polite. He needs her to be calm so that he doesn't get triggered. But the man who's done the work doesn't need her to be anything other than what she is in that moment. He doesn't just tolerate her emotional range, he reveres it, because he's familiar with his own. A woman's emotional chaos is not something to be solved, it is something to be held. And only the man who has walked through his own emotional chaos, who has cried, raged, broken, screamed in silence, can hold her without trying to fix or flee. This man is not soft. He is forged, hardened not by ego but by exposure, strengthened not by domination but by surrender. Not the surrender of giving up, but the surrender of giving in to what is real. She doesn't need your dominance, she needs your depth. And depth is only gained by descent, by falling, failing, losing, grieving, and choosing to feel it all, rather than medicate, run, or hide. That's what separates the grounded man from the performative one. Both may look confident, both may speak well, but one is hollow and the other has substance. She wants to feel that substance. She wants to look into your eyes and know that you've felt everything, and lived. That you've died 1,000 inner deaths, and emerged not as a victim, not as a savior, but as a man who simply knows himself, because when a man has faced his demons, he is no longer afraid of hers. He doesn't pathologize her emotion. He doesn't accuse her of being too much. He doesn't get defensive when she calls out his inauthenticity. He doesn't punish her for her vulnerability. Instead, he meets her in that space. And not with therapy speak, not with strategies, but with presence. With the knowing look of someone who's been there. She doesn't want to be healed. She wants to be seen. And you can't see her if you've never looked into yourself with the same level of honesty. Jung believed that every human being carries the potential for both creation and destruction, for divinity and monstrosity, and until you own the monster inside you, you remain incomplete. You may do all the right things, but your relationships will lack resonance, because the woman before you is not looking for your resume. She is looking for your integration. Have you owned your anger without letting it own you? Have you acknowledged your desires without being enslaved by them? Have you grieved what you've lost, what you never had, what still hurts? Have you stood at the edge of despair and refused to run from it? Because the man who has done these things does not approach relationship from a place of need. He approaches from a place of wholeness. He doesn't need her to complete him. He doesn't need her to validate him. He is not performing to win her affection. He is available, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, and this kind of availability is rare. It cannot be faked. It cannot be bought. It is not the result of reading books or listening to podcasts. It is earned through fire, through collapse, through being brought to the edge and not turning back. She senses this in your energy. She may not understand why she feels safe with you, why she softens without thinking, why her defenses fall. It's because she feels your containment, not your control, not your discipline. Your containment, your ability to hold the full range of her, expression without shrinking or overpowering, because you've held your own. You've held your inner child when he wanted to disappear. You've held your shame when it begged you to wear a mask. You've held your guilt without needing to offload it onto someone else. You've held your silence without needing to fill it with noise. And because you've done this, you can now hold her, not to save her, not to shape her, but to meet her. In the places other men flee from, she's not looking for a therapist. She's not looking for a guru. She's not looking for perfection. She's looking for a man who is present, not just in the room, but in himself. A man who knows what it means to break and still breathe. That's the man she trusts. That's the man she opens to. Because the deepest intimacy is not built on compatibility. It's built on capacity. Emotional, psychological, spiritual capacity. And that capacity is carved out in the shadows, not in the light of day, but in the darkness you dare to explore. If you have never allowed yourself to fall, you will never know what it means to hold. And if you've never held your own brokenness, you will not be able to hold hers. She doesn't want your escape story. She wants your underworld journey. She wants the man who stayed, who descended, who faced the monsters, his fear of failure, his fear of not being enough, his fear of being seen, his rage, his grief, his lust, his power, and chose to integrate rather than deny. That's the man who becomes magnetic, not because he tries, but because his energy speaks truth. It speaks of a man who no longer needs to be chosen, because he's already chosen himself. And the feminine feels this. She responds not to your efforts, but to your essence. Not to your confidence, but to your coherence, the alignment between your outer expression and your inner truth.